At its base, what my practice is really about is the changing definition of what we consider natural and what we consider artificial. So what I'm interested in are the things that move this definition about. And often they are things like innovation in medical technology. It used to be really simple to tell the difference between what was natural and what was artificial. But now it's not so easy. Before we could say this is mechanical, therefore it's artificial, and this is organic, and therefore it's natural. But now we can easily point to things that are totally artificial, but that they're grown. I'm interested in new technologies both to make my work, and I reflect on them in my work. But I'm not interested in them just on their own. What I'm really interested in are questions to do with what it is to be human. I'm also interested in the possibilities and the responsibilities that come with these new innovations. And I use these narratives in the work to talk about relationships between humans and animals, between animals and machines, between humans and the environment. And often when I talk about these relationships, I don't talk about them in a very rational way. I talk about them in an emotional way. Some of the ideas that I'm thinking about have no real answer. And I don't have the answer. I just present a situation. This situation behind me, it's called Still Life with Stem Cells. It's a young girl, very ordinary girl. She's playing with these stem cell blobs. What I'm talking about in this work is the idea that new technologies become absorbed into our environment so easily, so quickly. She's playing with stem cell blobs and she's nurturing them and loving them and caring about them. But what I'm asking is, perhaps we won't often and always get what we want from these new technologies. We want new hearts, new livers from stem cell research. But what she has are toys. This is a series of photographs called Nature's Little Helpers, and they depict this other creature that I've made, which is meant to be a bodyguard to an endangered species, a bird. And one of the questions that I'm asking is, where would this new life form live? Would it live in the forest? Would it live on the outskirts of our community? Would it be inside a community and enjoying the same things we do? I'm also talking about the idea of interfering with nature. Like, we feel that we can go into nature and change it and manipulate it and be able to still control it. But I don't think that's the case. This work is called The Young Family, and it's about growing human organs in other species. And so here we have a creature that's been supposedly created to make replacement organs for humans. But what she is doing is nurturing her children. And if you look into her eyes, you can kind of see that she's thinking. And we are left to wonder, what is she thinking about? In some ways, we feel close to her. And so, when it comes to making decisions about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing to grow human organs in another species, it's very difficult to make a decision about it when you're confronted with this very highly charged situation. Sometimes people look at her and think, oh, she's really quite grotesque. But I think they think that because they can see themselves. We see ourselves in her. And yet we don't like to think of ourselves looking like this. We don't like to think of ourselves as animal-like. And that is what is repelling. But in fact, what she's saying is that we are all derived from the same genetic material. She's related to us. With this work called Plasticology, I was asking the question, what is the natural environment for the urban dweller? The idea of the garden originated from a time when land was important. Who owned land was powerful. Now, land isn't that important. Who owns television stations? Who owns the internet? Who owns shares in Google is important. So I wanted to make a garden out of this stuff. What I was aiming to do in this work was get a real response from the viewer about the work. in that they actually feel something bodily, physically, in a real way. It used to be that the real was always defined as versus the artificial. Now you can get a real response which is not natural, which is made up of artificial forms. So it is real and artificial. This work behind me is called Nest. And as you can see, it's the mother Vespa and she's just given birth. And there's a real connection between the mother and the child. This is technology that has been changed by nature. And the young family is nature that has been changed by technology. It's interesting that we think that the other work is more feasible for our future. But actually, this is just as likely and just as inevitable. This work to me is quite allegorical. And in fact, I was looking at 19th century paintings about the nobility of animals, Victorian imagery. This is a story about control. We think that we can control technology, but as a machine reproduces itself, it approaches autonomy, and therefore we lose control of that technology. So these are the drawings that I make, and they're part of a series called Natural Helpers. And here we have these man-made creatures with human babies, and they're very close. In some ways, it makes us feel that the children are kind of vulnerable. We feel for them. We feel maybe they're a bit threatened because they're just too close to these animals, and we can't tell if they're laughing or crying. But ultimately, it may not be the children that are in danger. Maybe it's these creatures that are more vulnerable. Or maybe, actually, what we really find difficult is that we are uneasy with the idea of new technologies. So, as you can see from the title of this exhibition, Tender Creatures, there are lots of creatures in this exhibition. And on the whole, they're all pretty much loved. And I think that I present them in a very positive way. But in that way, I also ask very difficult questions about why you would create new life. Why do we do it when we don't really look after the life we have on this planet? And what our responsibilities to new life forms are? And what would their relationship to us be?